I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America for obstruction of justice.
120 of the Trump administration. And if the Russia investigation was ever just a distraction or a subplot, as of tonight, it defines and has consumed this presidency thus far, which, by the way, is a lot.
I think it's over for Republicans. In fact, I think Republicans in the House and the Senate can breathe a sigh of relief because there's been the appointment of a special counsel, but it doesn't relieve them of their responsibility. And I think it's now going to be incumbent on the Republicans to get together with Democrats and to appoint an independent commission to really look broadly at this so that there can be some kind of public record for the meddling that took place in the 2016 election and for the ongoing activities of this very brief presidency.
It's a really simple question. Did evidence exist of collusion, coordination, conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russian state actors at the time you learned of 2016 efforts?
I encountered and am aware of information and intelligence that revealed contacts and interactions between Russian officials and U.S. persons involved in the Trump campaign that I was concerned about because of known Russian efforts to suborn such individuals. And it raised questions in my mind, again, whether or not the Russians were able to gain the cooperation of those individuals. I don't know whether or not such collusion, that's your term, such collusion existed. I don't know. But I know that there was a sufficient basis of information and intelligence that required further investigation by the Bureau to determine whether or not U.S. persons were actively conspiring, colluding with Russian officials. Intelligence that was worthy of investigation by the Bureau to determine whether or not such cooperation or collusion was taking place. Russian intelligence activities over the years and have seen it, again, manifest in many different of our counterintelligence cases and how they have been able to get people, including inside of CIA, to become treasonous. And frequently individuals who go along that treasonous path do not even realize they're along that path until it gets to be a bit too late.
Mr. Brennan. 24 of the Trump administration, and the president is hiring a lawyer. It comes less than a week after the Department of Justice appointed a special counsel to oversee the FBI Russia investigation. Sources familiar with the decision tell NBC News President Trump is expected to retain Mark Kasowitz as private attorney on matters related to the Russia investigation. Kasowitz has represented Trump in the past, including, according to the Washington Post, some of Trump's divorce settlements and accusations of fraud against Trump University. We also heard today from former CIA Director John Brennan testifying before the House Intelligence Committee. Early on in the proceedings, the question of Russian collusion came up.
Having been involved in many counterintelligence cases in the past, I know what the Russians try to do. They try to suborn individuals, and they try to get individuals, including U.S. persons, to act on their behalf, either wittingly or unwittingly. And I was worried by a number of the contacts that the Russians had with U.S. persons. And so therefore, by the time I left office on January 20th, I had unresolved questions in my mind as to whether or not the Russians had been successful in getting U.S. persons involved in the campaign or not to work on their behalf, again, either in a witting or unwitting fashion.
Is it legally appropriate for President Trump to ask two top intelligence officers something like this?
Well, it's not unlike what Mr. Nixon did that got him in a lot of trouble when he asked the CIA through his chief of staff to go to the FBI and tell them to halt part of their investigation. Actually, Haldeman, his chief of staff, didn't carry out the full instructions, but they certainly were there on the tape. I think that what he's doing is, what Trump is doing is certainly more than a PR effort. If he could get these people to step out and give him some sort of wedge or opening against the FBI, I think he would have used it and pursued it, because he clearly doesn't want the FBI investigation to go forward. So it's part of a pattern showing his intent, and this may come back to haunt him, Don.
Do you think it's part of a pattern? I asked that too in the last segment.
That feel on it, and this is after watching Mr. Trump, and I think you and I would agree with this. He speaks very emotionally, he speaks very extemporaneously, he speaks kind of in the heat of the moment, and that's frankly what endeared him to a lot of people, but I think it sometimes gets him in trouble. And my reflection on those comments is that's probably his intention. I don't think he actually expected nor was asking that the investigation not go forward. I think he realizes the American people expect answers to these questions. I don't think it was appropriate if he did put pressure on them, but I don't think it rises to the level of obstruction. And, you know, the good news, Brian, is this. We've got Mr. Mueller. He's going forward with the investigation. I think it's going to take a little time, but most of us have a lot of faith in him. As
anybody out there who thinks this is the end of it, as John McCain keeps saying, this is a centipede and more shoes will continue to drop. This is a ball of yarn which continues to unravel. We have not heard the end of what went on with Michael Flynn. We have not heard the end of what happened with James Comey. He is going to have to testify probably in public. Senator Lindsey Graham told me today he was going to invite him to testify in front of the Judiciary Committee in public, and he's going to have to answer the question that Jason brought up. Why didn't he do something at the moment that this happened? But he's also going to have to tell the truth about this. Look, I don't know if it's going to be a special prosecutor, a select committee, an independent commission. I don't know if it's going to be the intelligence committees that are doing it right now. But at the end of the day, it is very hard in a country like America, where there is a free press, where there are law enforcement officials who are loyal to the Constitution and to the country, to keep things hidden. Yeah. So this is going to come out one way or the other. And my advice to Republicans is let's get it out. Let's get it all out now, for the good of the country, the good of the party, the good of the agenda, and even the good of this precedent.
That we no longer just have smoke. We have a raging 10-alarm fire at the White House. As a former prosecutor, what the president did in firing James Comey and then saying he did it to relieve pressure on himself because of the FBI investigation is a classic case of obstruction of justice, a federal crime. Anybody else who did something like this would be facing a federal indictment and a criminal trial.
Betting, I would say yes, including some who are working in the new administration. Or I guess I would say this: that my impression is I wouldn't be surprised after all of this is said and done that some people end up in jail.